Then I go from living in College Hill to a tent by West High. Then you're sleeping in a parking lot in 105-degree heat in July, 20-degree cold in the winter. And it's really hard to get back on your feet. A lot of people are like, go get a job, get a job. Well, it's not that easy when you haven't had a shower in 3 weeks and you have no phone for them to call you on. That it's not always a choice, that we don't always want to be out here. I think the worst is when you're at Quick Trip and you ask anybody if they have spare change and they keep on walking, like you don't exist. A simple no would work better.
So tell me, what's your first name?
Janaya.
Janaya. So how long have you been homeless for?
At first it was a year and a half, and then this last time from November to now, so 6 months.
6 months.
I was only housed for a month.
For a month is some short thing.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about, usually there's, talking to a lot of people, there's kind of a tipping point where it's like everything's good and then suddenly everything kind of starts falling apart. Where was your tipping point at the very beginning?
The very beginning was when I got sick with COVID. I had to miss work and I got behind on my rent. And even during the no eviction clause, they could evict you. And it was called a writ to detain, I guess is what it's called.
Okay.
And I went to eviction court and set up payment plans. And I just happened to miss one payment because I was out of town. And I emailed them and asked them if I could pay them on Monday because my payments were set up weekly on Friday. And on Monday, when I got back out of town, I got back at 5 a.m. from Colorado, and at 11 a.m. I lost everything I owned. And so then I became homeless. And I was in shock probably for 3 months, maybe.
Because had you ever experienced homelessness before that?
No,
like
I hadn't.
Growing up, like never had any issues? No,
no, I was always middle class. And then I was married for 20 years before we just separated and got divorced and lived in College Hill. And so I've never experienced it. Yeah, so it was, then I go from living in College Hill to a tent by West High.
I just couldn't imagine knowing that you have nothing.
And
like,
everything,
furniture, right? Yeah, that's
yes,
right?
I had, my grandma's things, and I had, a lot of stuff, and I left with a suitcase. Yes, and that was in February of 2021.
So where did you, did you try, when you became homeless, did you try like different avenues? Was there any type of, like, sometimes they'll say call 211. I mean, they have those different things. Were there any avenues that you tried to get into housing through churches or anything like that?
Yes, we tried through the Breakthrough Club and did housing tests, and they'll tell you to call a different number, or they'll tell you to go, here or here. It's a revolving door.
So it's not clear. It's not like you're homeless and you call this one number and they help at least move you forward?
No. Now, I have found that there are a lot of churches and places to eat around town, but as far as housing goes and helping with housing, it's very selective on who they help.
A lot of it maybe depends on the person's background of how they got into it, or what's the selective part?
Well, I actually, they have, it's called a SPDAT. It's a test that they give, like a questionnaire that they give you, and I scored really high on it for housing, and I still was unable to get it. Yeah. What
was the reason? Was it not enough housing or just funding issues that they told you?
They really didn't. They just every place kept sending me to a different one. And I would go back and check. And then also it's hard, like, because when you become homeless and your stuff gets stolen, or your camp gets pilfered or whatever, and so you don't have a phone and they can't call you back, and you can go to the open door, but there's a lot of miscommunication there. And so it was really, really, really hard. And like I said, the homeless outreach team finally, after a year and a half, gave me a voucher for 2 months and a deposit on an apartment. And all the woman told me, because she was sitting next to the other officer that runs it, and she just told me, because she did the referral while she was sitting there, to find an apartment and call this number downtown and they will pay the landlord. So I was excited. I knew the landlord of this certain apartment and I moved in. Well, about a week later, after I got settled, I called downtown to get the voucher paid to my landlords, and I was no longer available for the voucher because I was no longer homeless.
You weren't homeless because you gave like a physical address? Or how did they know that you weren't homeless, I guess?
I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to.
Give a physical address.
Yeah, she didn't tell me I wasn't supposed to move in. The officer didn't. And so when I told the lady that I didn't realize that, she looked up who did my referral, and she said, well, unfortunately, this officer was new and she probably did not think of that. However, my hands are tied. And so a month later, when I couldn't pay rent, I became homeless again.
It's probably, you get your hopes up and then it crashes.
And then
Hopes and crashes. It's probably a challenge.
You know, that's a lot of what goes on around here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of places help certain people, like it's a popularity contest, and like you were in high school, you know, or something like, you know, certain people and certain people. And it's really weird.
So talk to me a little about beyond the part of the normal homelessness that we think of, people like the people stand on the street and they have their signs and stuff like that and trying to find a place. What is the hardest part, like mentally or maybe physically, that you guys go through on a regular basis?
The elements, because there's times that you'll lose your tent, people, you know, and then you're sleeping in a parking lot in 105-degree heat in July, or in the 20-degree cold in the winter if you don't have a tent.
Yeah.
And so that's really hard, and it's really hard to get back on your feet. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are like, when you're flying a sign, go get a job. Well, it's not that easy when you haven't had a shower in 3 weeks and you have no phone for them to call you on. Shoot. It's not the lack of people not wanting one. It's the lack of, if you've been wearing your clothes, for a week, then if there's 20 people applying for that job, more than likely, it's not going to be you that they call.
Do you have all your IDs still?
No, and that's another thing. Okay. I have a friend that is on disability, but his card had a fraud thing on it. I guess Walmart ran it too many times. Well, he hasn't had his disability. He's in a wheelchair, and he hasn't had his disability in a year because it's so hard to get an ID when you don't have a physical address and no way to get there. And that's all he needs was an ID to send it in.
Just to move forward.
Yeah.
Does it make as far as like, I mean, some people like you said, it's like go get a job. But I mean, for you to get a job, you would need to go get an ID, correct?
Yeah.
You would need to have some type of physical address, which a birth certificate, and all this stuff. And is there anything that you know of beyond like the Salvation Army? They help sometimes with like money and stuff like that. That will help you take every single one of those steps to move forward.
There is. I think you can go to the open door and they will help you. However, my friend just did that last week, and she told him she was too busy to help him that day. And he wheeled down there from Douglas and Seneca to 2nd and Topeka. And I mean, that's a long ways.
Yeah, that is a long ways. Is there a lot of trust issues between? I talk to the different homeless people, and that sometimes it's a very good relationship with other people and you trust them, and sometimes it's a very they'll take your stuff. It's a very hard relationship with other homeless people. Talk a little bit about the community itself, the homeless community.
I think there are different areas of homelessness around town. You have your like North Broadway area and your downtown area and your southeast area over by South City, and then you have Delano, and you get to know some,
Sure.
the faces and everything, and all of that. There are some people that are good, and there are some people that will steal from you. That's like my ID and my backpack and everything was stolen and stuff. And so there are people that you become friends with that won't take from you. But then you always got to keep your back up, because as soon as you don't think they would, they will. Because they don't
have a choice.
Correct. So that comes into play a lot too. Yeah.
If there was one thing you wanted to tell people, like this is probably going to end up like on Facebook and let people understand the whole process, what would be the one thing you'd want to tell them about being homeless?
That it's not always a choice, that we don't always want to be out here, that sometimes it's hard to climb your way back up, and that we're just people too. I think the worst is when you're at Quick Trip and you ask anybody if they have spare change and they keep on walking like you don't exist. A simple no would work better than just walking on by. All you have to say is no.
Yeah. Because sometimes, do you feel that sometimes it's better to almost have like acknowledgement that you're actually physically there than just the ignoring part of it?
Than just like we're invisible.
Yeah.
So.
Because I think, judging by our conversation, sometimes you feel you're invisible and you're trying to move forward in like getting housing and stuff like that, and it's just like this constant revolving door, and it feels like you're visible over again, and then now you have contact with people constantly on a daily basis that feel like you're invisible.
Yeah, when they're not going to catch homelessness. That's what it feels like.
Oh, okay.
I mean, all it is a no.
So a lot of most people think of the ones that are sitting on the sidewalk or they're standing on the corner with their sign. Some people feel obligated to give them something, which depending on your perspective is good or bad. But do you feel that actually helps them move forward in some capacity to get them?
I think that it helps them survive.
Survival. That's pretty much what it is.
Yes, that is it. I think that it's hard to get ahead when you're just trying to make it through your day. Because not every place has free food, every day or something like that. And so there are things you might need, and so you're just trying to make it through your day. Yeah. And it's hard enough to make it through the day, let alone go forward. When you're just fighting to make it through your day.
So when you're standing in that situation, it's the day. It's not even close to thinking the future about what you do. Yeah.
No, it's just the day by day, and it's humiliating standing there or asking for money. I mean, nobody likes to do it.
Where do you? I find it kind of interesting sometimes with what people perspective of do you have a faith background?
I do. I believe in God. And
where do you feel that this whole God is kind of situating your life right now? Some people are very positive about it, and some are just kind of in the middle.
I feel like I have been kept safe so far, and I have not been hurt or had any violence towards me. So I know that He's watching. And I believe that God puts people somewhere for a reason. And maybe I needed to learn this. Humility. Because you never know whose day you're going to change by asking them if they're okay.
Yeah. that's kind of what you want sometimes.
Yeah. And there was this woman I'll never forget. She was in Quick Trip, and I had seen her a couple of times, and I asked her how she was doing. And she proceeded to talk to me for about 10 minutes, telling me about how her mother had passed and her sister, yada, yada, yada. And then she stopped, and she goes, "Thank you. Nobody has taken the time to ask me how I'm doing." And that was very, very profound for me. I think I won the lesson out of that.
So, well, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I really appreciate you talking.
Yes, sir.
That's that one. So, Janaya, would you be okay if I prayed with you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That one. Lord, thank you so much for Janaya and her time, that she can tell her story with everyone in the community. We know that God has a plan for her to find housing, and we hope that the community will move forward and give her what she needs so that she can thrive instead of just survive. Lord, amen. Thank you so much.